We ready? Okay, great. Welcome to Architects of Change Live, conversations with change makers who are moving humanity forward. And I'm super excited on this Monday to be talking to someone who I've wanted to meet, wanted to talk about, changed my whole schedule today so that I could, is Dr. Sara Gottfried. And she is really well known for her book, The Hormone Reset Diet. These are my tabs in here, so it's a mess. And also this incredible book called Younger, a breakthrough program to reset your genes and reverse aging. She has a new book coming out in the spring called The Brain Body Diet.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk to her. You can follow her on Instagram. Welcome.
Thank you.
I follow her, and because I wanted to talk to her about women's health overall, and really that one of the most important things is we can start paying attention to our health, to our hormones at a very young age. How, Sara, do we begin to demystify this subject, and why should a woman in her 20s pay attention to her hormones?
Well, I think it completely changes your risk of disease as you get older. And, I can tell you when I was in my 20s, I thought menopause was like this cliff I'd fall off of after 50, that I didn't have to worry about it, I didn't have to think about hormones, but the truth is actually the opposite. Your hormones start to change in your 20s. They start at puberty, really.
That's really important. So whether you're my age or whether you have a daughter or know somebody who's a teenager, the arc from puberty to Alzheimer's is connected.
It's totally connected.
Yeah.
And I just was looking at the data on breast cancer and how the way that you eat, move, think, and supplement has the most impact when you're a teenager, when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s and 40s. Like, that's where you get the most bang for your buck.
Eat, move, and supplement.
And sleep.
And sleep. Okay, so those are the criteria you're thinking: how you eat, how you move, how you supplement, and how you sleep.
The list is longer, but that's a good starting place.
So you want people to, particularly women, to start thinking about those criteria in their 20s.
In your 20s, in your 30s, I was reading your book, Maria, about intestinal fortitude.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is such an essential part of this conversation, because if you have intestinal fortitude, your hormones are in balance. So it's a way of going very quickly through hormonal balance, because your cortisol, the main stress hormone, is going to be in place. Right. Estrogen may or may not be. Progesterone is probably on board. So I think, the way that you dance with stress is such an important part of this too.
So how do we dance better with stress? Because I have to say, when my kids were little and I'm working full time, I'm mothering, I'm in a relationship, like my cortisol levels were like probably off the charts, right?
Yeah.
And people tell you, just relax, calm down. I mean, which is so irritating.
It's so irritating.
It's so
you want to punch them.
Yeah, that's right. So, but how do we help people manage stress, manage their lives when we live in a culture that, is go, 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 that responds to the people that do the most, work the hardest, and achieve?
Yeah. Well, we're rewarded for overdoing it.
Right.
And so we have to get the dose right. And I think that's different person to person. What I find in my practice, I've been taking care of patients for 25 years, the formula for you may not be the same as the formula for the next woman. So we have to personalize it. That's the kind of medicine I practice. So I practice functional medicine, personalized lifestyle medicine. How do we customize it for you? So your a la carte menu might be prayer, might be hanging out with girlfriends, like the benevolent ones who bring out the best in you.
Yeah.
It may be meditation. It may be going to SoulCycle. I mean, it could be anything. But what I want to challenge our listeners to do is to come up with that a la carte menu.
So also what I think what's so important, what you're saying, and we hear this from everybody that we talk to in the Alzheimer's space, is that we're in an era of personalized precision medicine.
Yes, absolutely.
And that you have to come to your doctor informed yourself.
Yes.
And not just because your girlfriend is doing this or that, should you be doing this or that. That puts a lot on the patient, doesn't it?
It puts a lot on the patient, but I started out in my career wanting to transform health for my patients, women, because I'm an OBGYN. And now I want to transform healthcare, because I think, I've got a bigger vision of how I want healthcare to be. And so in my vision, it's not just women on Google trying to figure out how to prevent Alzheimer's disease. It's a collaborative relationship with a physician or a professional who does this kind of precision personalized medicine. So they're testing your genes and looking at, okay, here's the top 5 things you're at risk for. They're looking at your food, what you're eating, because that's the most impactful thing that can change the way your genes are expressed. They're looking at your biomarkers, like doing blood testing and urine testing to say, okay, estrogen is doing these good things for you, but there are these bad metabolites that could increase your risk of XYZ, breast cancer, Alzheimer's disease. So I think there has to be that collaborative relationship. And if you have a physician, which I hear about all the time, who's not collaborative, who's just like, no, I'm not going to test your genes. No, I'm not going to like come up with some customized precision protocol for you. Change your doctor. You know, so I'm busy trying to train clinicians to do this, but this is the promise of personalized lifestyle medicine, that you really get it customized to what's going to be the most impactful for you.
Where do you come down, Sara, on hormones for women who are perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal? There's so much confusion. We talk about this in all the doctors that we've had on here who are dealing with Alzheimer's, talking about estrogen being a neuroprotector, and then people calling in and saying, well, like, oh my God, you know, I was told not to take hormones because of the increased risk for cancer. The big study that came out of NIH so many years ago terrified everybody about hormones, and yet women seem to be kind of, you know, getting vertigo from the confusion.
Like whiplash.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
the
but they're
pendulum
dizzy,
swings
right?
forward.
So we don't know really. And once again, always check with your doctor. But since Sara is a doctor, I'm checking with her. What should we be doing?
Well, I wish there was a yes/no answer. It's not quite that simple. And I think, you know, you wrote in your Sunday paper about John McCain and being careful of ideological ghettos. And I think we may be in an ideological ghetto with estrogen. So I think of estrogen, I'm a gynecologist, I think of estrogen as the master regulator in the female body. I think it's mostly a force of good, but there's also some risks associated with it. There's also alternatives to taking estrogen. When the data came out in 2002 with the Women's Health Initiative, it got, 23% of American women were taking hormones at that time. Everyone got terrified, came off of them by the millions. And now about 5% of American women who probably, are in the right age group are taking hormones. 5%. So I think that's too low. So we went from really 23% to 5%. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. But you have to customize it. So just like the a la carte menu of what's going to de-stress you, we have to do the same thing with hormone therapy. And so, you know, if I were taking care of you, I would look at your genome. So I'd look at about 25 genes that take estrogen and do various things with it. Send it to your brain, send it to your bones, send it to your breasts. And I'd look at, okay, what are your strengths? What are your vulnerabilities? Then I would look at your biomarkers. So what level of estrogen do you have in your body? I hope you don't mind me saying it.
Right.
You as you're not my patient, so I'm just like making this up. But I look at biomarkers.
These are good things to ask your doctor, right?
Yeah, so everyone can do this. So I'd look at your serum estradiol, but then I'd also look at your urine because I care about what level of estrogen you have in your blood, but I also really care about what level you have in your brain, what level you have in your bones, what level you have in your liver. So I want to look at urine to look at metabolites. So that combination of doing genetic testing plus biomarker testing is what allows me to give the best kind of collaboration and advice about whether to take estrogen. And again, it's not a yes/no answer. It's yes, why don't we consider a half dose? Yes, why don't we start with a 3/4 dose? I only use FDA-approved bioidentical hormones. I'm not a big fan of, the ones that you custom order from compounding pharmacies because studies show they can be off by up to 30% from what the doctor prescribes.
Wow.
So I like to use patches and gels and, estradiol, exactly what your body always made, and progesterone. But, I've been trained at Harvard and MIT to deliver the best quality that I possibly can based on the science.
So are you going around the country now trying to train doctors to think like you, dispense information like you? So if somebody wants to go and find a doctor who's been trained by you, how do they do that?
Well, they can always go to our website, saragottfriedmd.com. So we list practitioners there. And I usually go to about 15 cities and a lot of countries, because there's a lot of interest around the world now, training on this. And it's, just going back to the younger women, because I think perimenopause is such a pivotal time. I could talk about that all day, because it's, the hypometabolism, what's happening in the brain with estrogen. I think that's such a fascinating topic, and I see it in my practice. But there's also the women with polycystic ovarian syndrome. There's the women with PMS. There's the women with postpartum depression and other symptoms of hormonal imbalance that can be addressed with this natural approach that's proven, it's scientifically based, and yet I would say the majority of conventional doctors are not doing it.
So do those women, the women who have polycystic ovarian and postpartum depression, are they the ones that could also be getting the Hormone Reset Diet? Because when you think of like the Hormone Reset Diet, you think of women my age, or you think of women even younger than me, but you don't think of my daughters. But this is also for their age group.
It's absolutely for their age group. So it's I wrote it for all different ages.
Heal your metabolism to lose up to 15 pounds in 21 days, but it's not just about weight loss.
It's not just about weight loss. I mean, weight loss is such a pain point for patients. 80% of my patients want to lose weight, even when they're at a normal weight. But it's, the first chapter in there is about how to reset estrogen. So that you're eating less red meat, which can raise the dangerous and provocative estrogens, and also coming off of alcohol, not for the rest of your life, but for 2 to 3 weeks, because that lowers your estradiol level, the bad estrogen level, so that you can reduce your risk of breast cancer. It doesn't, alcohol shrinks your brain, and so you have to be a little bit careful with how much that you have. There's new data now showing that there's no safe amount. Of alcohol. So this goes through, all the different hormones that I address in my practice, estrogen, thyroid, cortisol, etc., and how you can fix it with the way you eat.
That's a really important thing. Another thing, if you feel like you can't take hormones, right, because you may have cancer in your family, that you can eat in a way, right, that brings in estrogen through your food.
That's right. I had flax seeds this morning on I made a shake bowl. And flax seeds work really well for me to raise my phytoestrogens, kind of my healthy estrogens, protective estrogens. So that's just an example of some of the foods that can help you balance your hormones naturally.
And you talk also about supplements. We also talk about supplements, and there are so many supplements
it's
now,
confusing.
and people are wildly confused, and I'd throw myself into that, and even though I've talked to a lot of people about it. When you said you were talking about, eating, sleeping, moving, and supplementing, what is your kind of advice on that front?
Well, this again is where I like to customize.
Right.
So, there's certain supplements that I think everyone benefits from.
Right, and what would be,
so fish oil, I think, is key. So we know that fish oil helps you with cortisol. It lowers cortisol. It also increases lean body mass. And I don't know anyone who doesn't care about that. So it's going to help you, not just at age 20, it's going to help you at age 60 to maintain your muscle mass as you get older.
But not all fish oil is created equal.
It's not. So you have to have the type that's third-party tested. You want a high level of quality assurance. You want to make sure that it's GMP, so good manufacturing process behind it. Unfortunately, the vegan sources, I don't think the data is as strong for those. So this is a situation where I talk to my vegans and vegetarians about considering fish oil.
Right.
I also have found over the age of 40, you don't absorb nutrients as well as you used to, especially B vitamins, B12 in particular. So I take a multivitamin that has these nutrients. I also tend to be low in certain minerals, so like magnesium and potassium. So those are the things I take every day. And then the other things are kind of based on what your goals are. So for me, I'm 51. I want to have intact mental acuity for the next 50 years because we have to change. We have to change the earth, right? We've got a big project.
Here, we have to use our minds, right? And we have this incredible Alzheimer's epidemic. We're about to have World Alzheimer's Day this Friday, and so I'm constantly, beating this subject about, what can we do? We don't have a pill, right? It feels somewhat hopeless, although I'm hopeful.
Yes,
but we can change the way we eat, the way we move, the way we sleep, the way we move, meaning exercise, right? And supplements. What else do you think, like when you talk about the brain-body diet, I'm not, like, what is the headline for you on that?
Well, the headline is that I think so many smart women think from their head up.
Yeah.
Like they're not connecting their brain to
Yeah.
the rest of the body.
Right.
And so in terms of supplements, I think Huperzine A is actually pretty effective for about half my patients. I use that a lot. Phosphatidyl.
Now that I didn't know. Huperzine A.
Huperzine with an H.
Oh, Huperzine A.
So that's something I take every day, and I think it helps me with focus. I also am a big fan of something called phosphatidylserine. So phosphatidylserine, also known as PS, is something that helps the hippocampus. So it helps the hippocampus kind of calm down, and it can help you sleep at night. I recommend usually 300 to 400 milligrams before you go to bed. So those are a couple of supplements that I think are really good for the brain.
Yeah.
The phosphatidylserine also lowers cortisol. So
Right.
you were talking about being a mother of 4 and your
Yeah.
cortisol.
Yeah.
And I'm the mother of only 2, but I'm someone who has a cortisol that tends to run about 3
Yeah.
times what it should.
Yeah, same
So
here.
I need supplements that kind of get my cortisol into that Goldilocks position where it's not so low that I'm exhausted, but it's not so high that I'm all revved up.
Right.
And phosphatidylserine does that.
Well, there. And when this is over, I'm going to walk right down to the supplement store, and I'm going to hope somebody remembers the words she just said. But also, I want to talk about the concept of younger. You have a book called Younger, and we also seem to live in a society where people think younger is the ideal, and that younger is in terms of facelifts or injections and all these other things. But that's not the younger you're talking about.
It's not the younger I'm talking about.
Explain what is the younger, your concept of younger. What does younger mean to you?
So to me, younger is a reflection of your biology. So it's a reflection of your cells, cell to soul, I would say. So this book is not about plastic surgery. It's about how to change the way
Younger.
your lifestyle's talking to your DNA. So the reason I got interested in this is because I figured out my hormones. I got my cortisol where it should be. I lost the weight that I had gained with babies in my 30s. But then I did a test. I tested my telomeres. I don't know if you've tested your telomeres.
No, I haven't. I haven't, but I know of it.
Yeah. So telomeres are these little caps on chromosomes that are an important marker of biological age. So Elizabeth Blackburn got the Nobel for her
out
work.
of San Diego,
and
right.
anytime a woman gets a Nobel Prize, I pay attention. So I tested my telomeres. I was 45. Went to the lab, thought, I'm a pretty good hormonal specimen. I'm going to do okay here. And my result came back that at age 45, I had the telomeres of a 65-year-old woman. So I was aging 20 years faster than I should have been. So clearly, there was some gap in my knowledge. Even though my hormones were in a good place, I was missing something. So that's what this book is about. It's about this adventure I went on to slow down the aging and to create a protocol so that I could reduce the inflammaging in my body. I really like that term because it's
opposed to inflammation, inflammaging.
Yeah. So I had too much. I had too much wear and tear. I had too much. My blood sugar was elevated, and I think so many women have that problem.
Right.
And 60% of cognitive decline is due to blood sugar abnormalities.
Right. That's why we try to reach out and talk about diabetes. Is once you get diabetes, you're on a fast track towards.
You're on a fast track, but
you can stop it.
Here's what I find in my practice. I would say somewhere around 70% of the patients I take care of don't have diabetes, but they have prediabetes.
Prediabetes, right.
And so even the range that doctors use, conventional doctors use, they say if your fasting blood sugar is less than 100, you're fine. That's not true. So half of those patients actually have a problem with insulin block, insulin resistance, where your cells become numb to insulin.
And what do you recommend for that? Most people, conventional doctors will say metformin.
No. So this idea of a pill for every ill, I think, is how we got into this mess with our healthcare system. So I believe in a personalized lifestyle medicine approach.
Yeah.
It's like I'm sounding like a broken record. So I believe, you got to change your food. So you got to eat the nuts and the seeds and the plants and the pound of vegetables a day, and seafood is always a good thing. Those will help you with your blood sugar. You have to reduce the amount of stress, especially when you're eating. You have to hang out with benevolent women and have a lot of connection and purpose and meaning.
Right.
You also want to make sure that your muscles are hungry for glucose so that they're soaking up the extra glucose in your body. But I want the fasting blood sugar to be between 70 and 85. That's the optimal range. That's going to help me and my patients 60% lower risk for Alzheimer's disease when they're in their 60s and 70s.
How do we get people to start thinking about Alzheimer's disease in their 40s, in their 30s?
Yeah, I think a lot about this. So I start the conversation by, what's your fasting blood sugar? Like, I want every patient to know that, and their vitamin D level, but let's start with fasting blood sugar. So doctors test it pretty much every year when you go to see them. I want people to have ownership of it.
So they'll say usually like it's a 5.7, it's a 5.8, it's a 5.9.
So like a hemoglobin A1C.
Right.
So I want the hemoglobin A1C to be less than 5.
Less than 5?
Less than 5. And if it's not less than 5, then we have a conversation about how to do that.
Wow.
But to me, that's how you get people to care about their brains. You connect the dots. You say, look, your fasting blood sugar is 105. Look, your hemoglobin A1C is 5.8. This is a path to Alzheimer's disease. We have to fix this.
And you say that to them at whatever age they are.
30s and 40s. The average age in my practice is 46.
So that's really important, what she just said, is connecting where you are now with the track that you're on, and then also not scaring you, but then saying, okay, we can fix this. We can get off this escalator, right?
Absolutely.
We can change it around. And that's the great thing we've learned about the brain, is that it grows, it's, it can be fed, right? It doesn't have to be deteriorating. That's really where we have the hope when it comes to Alzheimer's right now.
It's where we have the hope. And I also would say we don't have to give our power away to a physician who wants to prescribe metformin. So I can tell you that a combination of changing the food on your fork together with exercise, together with maybe berberine, which has been shown in a head-to-head trial to be as good as metformin, if not better, because there's fewer side effects. Like, those are the strategies that have rigorous scientific evidence behind them, but not enough doctors are talking about it or offering it.
Exactly, yeah.
So we have to fill that gap. I feel like that's part of our job as messengers, is to have people understand that, there's all this influence from big pharma on physicians. I know because I was conventionally trained, but we can move beyond it. Like, we can use this other evidence. We can look at Lisa Mosconi's work, and look at hypometabolism in the brain for women in their 40s, and we can figure out, okay, what are the solutions? What are the things we do to maintain that level, that high level of metabolism in the brain?
And Lisa Mosconi, that Sarah just mentioned, has been on this conversation. I've done a lot of work with her, even through NBC, and you can go back and look at our interviews with her. What about the whole concept that having a female doctor makes you healthier? Do you subscribe to that, or do you feel like you can educate your male doctor, your general practitioner? Because so often when I say to people, take your mother or your father to the doctor, they'll say, I'll go, and they never ask about a cognitive baseline. They never ask me these questions. I don't know what to do. Should I go to a woman doctor? Should I go to a functional medicine doctor? What should I do?
So I don't actually think it has to be a female doctor. I think it has to be a doctor who's open-minded and collaborative. So I feel like we're not going to change the world without the support and engagement of men.
Right.
So to me, as I educate physicians, I'm going to educate the women along with the men. I think it's harder for a man to relate to what happens in your 40s. I think it's harder for a man to understand the dramatic changes of pregnancy and just like that crazy, like fourth trimester of being postpartum. But, for the ones that are astute, the ones that are perceptive, they get it.
Yeah.
So I think, to me, the important part is that women are not dismissed.
Right.
So that we're talking about our true experience. We're talking about, like, what's happening with our brains at age 51, at age 62. Yeah, like, I think it's important that we really have engaged conversations about that.
Yeah.
So, man, women, I don't care.
Without shame,
without shame,
fear.
without judgment, and
I
also, to kind of lower these barriers that we have, this idea that we all have it together and, you know, like we're putting on the good picture that's on social media. Like, we have to talk about our vulnerabilities along with figuring out what works.
I think it's also really important. Many of the doctors that I've gone to say women, really well-educated women, women of all walks of life, come in and think if they get a pap smear and a mammogram, they're done. And that's the kind of the bikini medical, right? That's
Totally.
they call it. And
Totally.
that so many people still feel that that's a comprehensive physical. It's not. And I think if you've learned anything from this, is that if you're doing that, you better get with the program, because that is not a holistic program. That is not a holistic approach, right? And that we all have to, whether you're reading Sara's books, which I hope you will, following her on Instagram, which I do, and it's really, you know, she's really great, really honest and kind of great information out there, but that we've got to get control of our own health. And when I was 30 and 40, none of this was out there.
No.
So those of you who are in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, even your early 50s, you have such a leg up on women of my generation, because none of this was out there. None of this was discussed. There wasn't a person like her out there. So you can have the longevity that you're looking for. And you can also care for your parents who also didn't get this information. I think there's this whole, you know, so many generations of caregivers on deck, right?
Yes,
that can
for
be
sure.
really helpful to their parents. Like my kids come to me and go, "Oh, that drink you just bought, Mommy's full of sugar," even though it's a juice drink.
Right,
You know, they're like, "You
right.
got to read the label." You know,
You taught them well.
yeah, but I don't do it. So they're constantly coming in and taking things out of the refrigerator that I have bought. So where do you think, you said you really want to change healthcare?
Mm-hmm.
What's your vision, and how can we support it?
So my vision is that we move beyond the broken model that we have. I mean, if you just look at some of the statistics, the average appointment in the U.S. with a doctor is 7 minutes. I can't deliver the kind of quality that I was trained to give in 7 minutes. It's impossible. So the bikini checkup is 50 years ago, and that's the best you can do in 7 minutes. So we need to transform healthcare so that there's more time, there's more collaboration, there's more open-mindedness, and not this siloed, you know, a pill for every ill. We also know from the economics of healthcare that 70% of our healthcare costs are lifestyle.
Right.
So to me, that then begs the question, how do we fix our lifestyle?
Yeah.
Like, how do we get people to take ownership, as you were just describing? How do we get people to care about the drinks that they have, the food that they're eating, you know, what you have for dinner tonight? How do we get people to care about the exercise, not from like a place of restriction or I don't want to do that, but oh my gosh, it's like the best medicine for your brain. It's the best thing you can do. So that's where I want to head with transforming healthcare. And also, I have to put in a little plug for feminism. We have a long history of uncontrolled experiments on women. We have a long history of women being dismissed, especially after the age of 40, and given anti-anxiety medicines, antidepressants, and sleeping pills just to get them out of the office after 7 minutes. No one's looking at the root cause. We have to address the root cause. So that's what's going to help us with all chronic disease, especially Alzheimer's disease. So that's where I want to head.
Well, I'm in it with you. So,
Awesome.
I think that's great, and that requires all of us to transform ourselves, because it's everything, I always say, begins with us. And you can find out, as I said, more about Sara through social media, through her website, by reading her books, and then by getting the new book when it comes out in March. And I want to work with you to kind of transform women's health, which ultimately will transform the health of our nation. And the health of our family. So I'm so glad you came. I'm so glad to meet you. Congratulations on all of this work, and check out her message. Thanks so much for joining us.